From our studios in Los Angeles and Tampa, this is Green Tagged Theme Park in 30. I'm Philip, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Scott Swenson of Scott Swenson Creative Development. It is it may not feel like it is the thick of Halloween season because it's 110 here and it's 97 where Scott is. But it is, in fact, the thick of Halloween season. I think most of the theme park events have opened this year before Labor Day, and some even earlier than that, as we reported that Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party actually opened August 9th as the first ticketed event. So it's been a while. We're almost a month into Halloween already, which is wild. But I thought we'd start off with some experiences I did this past week. Um, and I did Oogie Boogie Bash and the opening of Halloween Horror Nights Hollywood, of course, which happened. And then I made a trip out to Salt Lake City to see our friend Spencer at the Fear Factory there that are already opened. Even the independent haunts, I think, are opening a little early this season. So Oogie Boogie Bash, um, I think we talked about last week about Halloween Horror Nights in Orlando and a little bit like the lack of consistent atmosphere. More like there are pockets that they've kind of created around and there are extensive periods of time where you're standing in line and there's no atmosphere at all that's surrounding you. I think Oogie Boogie Bash is the opposite in that, the one thing Disney does really well, it may take them a while to get something rolled out, but definitely the consistency is always there. And I would say that's what you feel. Oogie Boogie Bash, the entire event, no matter where you are, feels like a party. And it does kind of stick coherently with the plan. Um, they don't really talk about the story of the event, but I'll tell you because I know the story of the event is that Oogie Boogie kind of steals a spell, and what he does is kind of summon open a portal basically and summon monsters in. And so the portal that where he opens it is the Villains Grove area, which is why the villains aren't there, but it's all projection mapped. And this you see the walkthrough, you see all the zones, kind of all of the villain worlds sort of half merging into our world, and that's where they come in. Then all the villains set up little stations, right? So that's kind of the loose story, and they keep with that. And while Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party hasn't changed at all between this year and the previous year, Oogie Boogie Bash, they do add and take away villains. So the villains do rotate. So this year we had Hades and Dr. Schmertz from Phineas and Ferb, which was an interesting choice. And what I like about the Oogie Boogie Bash event is that they create, scenes for the villains. So when you're walking through to the treat trail and the villain is there's a whole set. And I think the Hades one, everyone was talking about. I mean, um, it's pretty phenomenal. They use a stage for Hades set, and they basically created a little underworld kind of set. And so you have all of the Greek pillars, and you have like the Greek backgrounds, and then projection maps the flames over it, and then Hades is walking, and it's a face character, so they do have like Hades a prosthetic and a makeup on him, and he is improving the whole time that you're walking through. He's talking to people, he's making comments about your costumes and whatnot. And then the best part is when you mention Hercules, or if you talk to him and you mention something from the movie that gets him angry in the movie, then he will actually get angry in character and he will turn red like in the movie. So all of the background lights trigger and his hair actually changes color. So it was really cool. It was a good job. I mean, it's a great villain. It's a great job. The actor does a great job also knowing the character and knowing the character's trigger lines, because he only does it, it's like if you mention Hercules or if he sees a Hercules in costume or something, then he'll do it, or a Meg, or he has to be something that would upset the character normally. So I think that's was a really fun addition. And the Doctor, I don't watch Phineas and Ferb too much, but the Doctor was also fun because of the set. It looks like a cartoon. It looks very similar to what what with the X-Men mansion and that kind of stuff. It's very similar where it's a they're real props, but they look like cartoon, and they really mix really well, like a neon, um probably like a like a porcelain, but like a fiberglass, like a fiberglass with like projection mapped and lighting beams that so make it look like the cartoon has come to life. And that character, people are saying, has given them nightmares because the way the prosthetics fit and everything, it like kind of looks like even though he's supposed to be a cartoon, but kind of looks like a nightmare. So, um, yeah, but I think otherwise the whole event is solid. The lighting package, the music and whatnot, and then we get new villains, and the new ones are always great. You have the old villains from last year, and the previous year. So you still have Ernesto, where he actually plays the guitar and he sings. So it's a singer up there that's on stage playing a guitar, playing songs. It's fun, I think, because you get the chance to interact with these villains in an improv way that's not just we're taking photos of you, right? You're actually, because you don't get to stop and take photos, you have to keep walking. So it allows the character the opportunity to actually improv the entire time and just kind of exist.
Well, and that was kind of one of my questions: is do these improv moments, like we'll call them mini worlds, for lack of a better
Hmm.
description,
Hmm.
do they gather crowds?
Yeah, so they do gather. I think the whole purpose of the event is to see the villains. And there's only 10 of them there, and then there's two trails that don't have any villains, and then there's 10 that have villains. So really, it's a lot of capacity that you have to plan for, which is really why you can't stop and just stand there and watch. So the cast members will very gently kind of prompt you to move along, or to not stand too long. You can stand, I'd say, maybe 30 seconds if you want, but the way they've done it operationally is also very smart. So when you when you're right in front of the villain, there's two lanes, right? One lane is like the slow lane where all the people are going to stop and maybe try and take a picture of the villain or do something like that. And then the lane behind them is the fast lane where you're just going to keep walking. So that really helps to move the people. The people that just want to see the villain and don't want to try and ask them a question or just want to look at them, and they can take the fast lane. And then of course you can wait. But in previous years, when the event first launched, I would say you could wait up to an hour for a villain. But when I went this past week, we didn't wait more than 20-30 minutes for anybody, and that was only for the really long wait times. And towards the end of the night, you could almost walk directly up to Hades because the people were doing the parade or whatever. So I think that actually they've improved the operations really well.
So it
and
almost sounds like a hybrid between a scare zone scenario, a multiple scare zone scenario, and a haunt scenario. So
yep.
it's in essence a linear-ish experience,
Yep.
um, that has downtime in between, so that you have that connective material, and then it ebbs and flows,
Yes.
which would be, yeah, no, I think that's very smart. Um, I do know that we had talked about that even many, many years ago for a full theme park, because again, that's a very cost effective way to do things.
Yes.
Instead of building one
Yep.
continuous set that you go through as a complete haunt, create a linear experience that is a series of, here's this villain and here's this villain, or here's this scene, excuse me, here's this moment. um and I love the fact that they are kind of tied together with some form of story, because that's always my biggest pet peeve, is that,
Hmm.
like, let's just throw stuff up there. But I think that the fact that it is sort of a portal that has opened, to suck the villains in from their world, uh,
Hmm.
kind of makes sense. I like that, and as you say, it also makes it so that you never leave the party, so to speak.
Yes.
So you can constantly keep that going. Yeah, I've seen. I obviously did not experience it, but I have seen videos of Hades, and the anger transformation is really, really cool.
It's cool.
I think a really good takeaway from this is just make sure you understand what your guests are looking for, because with Disney villains, they just want to see them, interact with them for a moment, and move on. I mean, it almost becomes a collector's card mentality. It's like, okay,
Yep.
saw Hades, check. Saw um, three other, whatever all the other
Yeah.
villains are.
Agatha,
Agatha, yeah,
you know,
saw them check, so that they can feel as though they have a full experience without really having to sit through an entire show of Hades, or an entire show of of any of the other villains. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I also like the fact that, the other takeaway that I would throw out there is, don't underestimate the impact of something that is not in a traditional theater setting. Because if you could do something really cool technically or theatrically that
Hmm.
people walk by, photograph, and send out, that is marketing bank.
Yep.
It's a perfect example. And the fact that I have not even, in fact, the first time I saw it, I didn't even know what it was from until I actually dug in and went, oh, Oogie Boogie Bash, got it.
Yep.
But it's phenomenal marketing. And all too often, I think what happens is, uh, especially with Halloween, all the money is spent on those things that either people sit down or they walk through a haunt.
Yep.
And don't underestimate the impact you can have by doing something that is technically amazing. Um, that is something you don't necessarily have to wait for, plan for. You just kind of can experience as you walk through it.
Yep.
And another thing too is that I think is really really important is, as you said, they're strong improv actors. The villains, villains who need to play instruments. Villains who need to be sharp witted and have a sharp tongue are sharp witted and have a sharp tongue. So it's not like you're just looking at the villains; you're actually interacting with them and getting to meet them.
Yes. I was going to say that's exactly right. And I like that they give the guest a role in that
Yes,
way. So the
exactly.
yes, so the guest can dictate their experience to an extent. So like for example, and this is something that I actually I wish other people did more of, and I think we're getting too far away from this. But the guest can dictate their experience to a way. So for example, even the guest could choose to dress as Hercules and go to meet Hades and then play a character. I'm playing Hercules. I'm going to come see Hades. Hades is going to get angry at me. And all that does is entertain everybody in
Correct.
line.
Correct. And it saves the park money on additional labor. They don't have to cast a Hercules. And so
Correct.
not only is it more impactful for the guests, it's also more cost effective for the park.
Yep. And I think those moments, especially, and also what you mean about the theater effects too, especially if you can combine them, because it is tricky on the actor because the Hades actor has to. So the cue, the fire cue doesn't happen on a schedule. Basically, like the actor somehow, I think he kind of gives them a look, or he somehow triggers the tech team to trigger the lighting behind him, and they sync up together. So it's really again an actor skill, but it's an excellent actor skill, and it's not. I mean, good actors can do this
Hmm.
easily.
Well, it's not that different from running sound for an animal show.
Yep.
There's or running audio for things like cheerleading competitions. For all those excuse me, those triggered sound effects, the explosions, the shing, sounds and whatever that is. The once the technician and the performer understand where they're going, it relies, if they're not triggering it themselves, it relies on a strong technician who can watch going, oh, he's clearly getting angry. So you have to rehearse them as a duo. You
Yep.
have to rehearse them together so that they understand one another and they basically become acting partners, even though one's never seen.
Yep. Yep. And that's exactly what's happening. And like Scott said, taking that where it normally would be in a theater show, but opening it up to just a revolving line and opening it up to the marketing. Oh, brilliant. Just smart. Same thing with playing, right?
Hmm.
Knowing when to turn on the guitar. I mean, just that there's a lot of moments. It's so actor heavy, and we don't see that much in Halloween. So I think a lot of our Halloween stuff focuses, like Scott said, on the sets.
Well, and
And
you honestly don't see it much outside of Hollywood,
yeah,
yeah, or California in general. And I think it's because California understands and expects uh, stronger actors. You're also pulling from a larger acting pool, so they can do things like that, and it's more appreciated.
yeah. Okay, well, speaking about that exact same trend, let's go quickly. Just Halloween Horror Nights Hollywood. We have a video out, so people are interested to see, you can watch video of myself and Masaki, who is visiting and who has never been to Halloween Horror Nights before, and who fell over in basically every maze, which is just fun to watch. Oh, I thought it was funny to watch. But so we, I love it.
But that's because Philip tied their shoelaces together,
Yeah.
and
No. So the interesting thing to me about that entire event, because I want to go quickly and not really talk too much about it, but it's the same trend of the actors. So in this of in the A Quiet Place in Hollywood was stand out to me because it's in the Walking Dead space. So it's a permanent building. So they were able to do a little bit more with the elaborate sets. And so they have 10 death angels, which are the creatures from A Quiet Place. And it's a mix of puppets and animatronics.
Mhm.
And they're gorgeous. I think the maze, they clearly want you to see them, because I think that the strobe guy got a little trigger happy. Clearly, because they really want you to look at those guys. And so,
We
but
spent a
from
lot on these puppets. Let's make sure everybody sees them.
correct, I think that's exactly what the team said. But what I will say is, what was really fun in that maze that you didn't see as much of in Orlando, it just wasn't highlighted as much, is really that all of the actors in that maze, none of them make any sound. They all sign at you and at each other. So there's multiple scenes where there's two actors and they're signing between each other, or they're arguing or whatever, and all in sign language. And there's still music in the scenes, right? But in every scene, basically what happens is there's regular actors that are signing at you or at their partners, and there's something that one does that makes a noise, and then the monster comes out and comes to attack the scene. And I just think that interplay was a lot more highlighted, and just a lot more live actors, obviously, because it's Hollywood. But again, I think it was so unique to me. That thing I've never seen in a haunt before, which is very rare at this point. Something I have never seen before. And I just love the concept of the actors are not yelling at you or trying. The
Mhm.
actors are not trying to do anything to you. They are just trying to save you, and they're using sign language to try and stop you from talking. And I'm like, this is so inverted and it's so unique. And I wonder how many guests even notice, honestly. I don't know. I don't know, because obviously the guests are screaming their heads off and they're not even paying attention, right? But I thought it was a very well done, very well done, very well done, very unique. It did actually feel unique. I'll
So
give Murray that.
how do the actors react when the guests scream?
They're like,
Taken
they're
completely
like,
taken aback. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're like, you're
Unlike
not supposed to do
unlike
that.
most unlike most haunted attractions, especially theme park haunts, the goal is the actor, the character's role is not to make you scream, it is to keep you from screaming. Yeah.
Hmm.
I like writing in those characters that take the same, they're basically playing the same character as the guest, and they're
Hmm.
trying to, help them not be devoured and destroyed, Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I think that would be very interesting.
Yeah, it's excellent. The other standout one I'm just going to mention is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Whereas I think in Orlando, we talked about Insidious and it being the scariest because it was a traditional haunt. In the same fashion, the Texas Chainsaw Haunt is the scariest because it's also a traditional haunt, but it's a traditional, like, corn maze feely haunt. I mean, there are so many chainsaws and they're just everywhere. But they're not. This isn't like we're gonna pop out of a corner. This is like you walk down a cornfield and there are two guys with chainsaws just standing there, and you can see them, and you have to walk through them, and they you have to walk to them, and you already see them, and they're not moving, and then they just wait for you, and a bunch of rooms like that, or where they're standing on the lift so they're above you so they can slash down. But in every scene, none of them are like hidden. They're just there. I mean, you see them the entire time, which
Mhm.
again is unique for theme parks, but not unique for independent haunts. But it is very effective because, again, the guests, it's like they know it's like they see what they're going to have to do, and so they know they have to do it. And I think it uniquely
Creates a
works for
sense of
Universal.
anticipation. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it uniquely works for Universal because the big problem Universal has is they have to have a throughput so high that the guests will see the trigger in front of them. They'll see things fire in front of them. So when your haunt's trigger based, it's not really effective at Universal because, if you're in a conga line, right, and then you can see the things that happens, five people ahead of you, so you know
Mhm.
to expect it. But this one is just like, you know what? There are no triggers. We're just a bunch of people with chainsaws, and you got to walk through them, and in that way they kind of remove that limiter. So I think both of these mazes will stand out for the
That's
reasons.
cool. Very
Yeah.
cool.
Really quick, I also went to Fear Factory to visit our friend Spencer there. I'm not sure if we're supposed to talk about it, but we're going to because he's not listening, so it's okay. Nobody telling us. But Spencer has a.
Philip, you know that at least one person listening knows Spencer. You know that, right? At least one.
It's always a great haunt. 90,000 square feet, a very large property. You go up. It's 6 stories, and you're going up and down and under tunnels and whatnot. There's 18 flights of stairs. It's a large experience. But this year, what was interesting to me is that if you remember last year, we talked about they did a mocktail bar last year,
Mhm.
and it was excellent. They set up little photo booths for the drinks, so it was cute. This year, they've expanded that, and they haven't opened it yet because it's still pending some stuff. But they are doing a full bar this year. They've expanded into, and they've built out the whole bar. It's outside. It's a great, great thing, and they've got partners, to sponsor the alcohol and to sponsor the drinks and all that, and it's just really smart. The sponsorship part in particular. Again, we've seen theme parks do it a lot, but I think it's a great idea for attractions of all sizes to partner in any way you can with these food and beverage offerings. I know that a lot of I think theming your drinks is important, but equally, it's okay if you can get a Red Bull or a Rockstar partner and you make a drink around the Rockstar that's also spooky. That's great. Do that.
Well, and you mentioned that there's the partnership and the sponsorship, but what a lot of people don't realize is even in attractions, culinary is already a partnership year round. It's something that
Mhm.
happens all the way around. And the trick, I think, when getting a partnership or creating a partnership or a sponsorship in this kind of experience, is to make sure they have all the information they need so that their contribution can contribute to the overall guest experience. If you're doing a haunt and you're partnering with a food truck, for example, that's just parked outside, and you don't give them any information about what the story is, what the experience is,
Yep.
then I think you're actually not only making it a less impactful guest experience, but I think you're also leaving money on the table, because the
Yep.
more they feel as though, oh, this is part of the world that we're in, this is part of the experience that we're having. I need to buy that drink, that taco, that whatever it is that is themed to match everything else,
Yes. Totally
and
agree.
and find the partners you can work with.
Yeah. So that's a great takeaway. Okay, that was a lot of trip reports. Let's get a little bit of news. We're gonna go back to Halloween Horror Nights, for this time in Singapore. So Halloween Horror Nights Singapore has partnered with Jackson Wang, and Jackson Wang is a pop artist and founder, but basically mainly he's known for being the designer of the apparel brand Team Wang Design. So he's like and they're a pretty, I would say, like, luxury brand. So basically, he's a luxury brand designers is what he's mainly known for, and that's called Wang Design. So the haunted house that they're collaborating on this year at Halloween Horror Nights Singapore, Universal's collaborating with Jackson Wang, and they're going to do a haunted house called Under the Castle, and it will involve Pumpky and Spooky, two of the characters from some of their lines, like their clothing lines. So the official backstory is, as guests venture into the Under the Castle haunted house, they will uncover the sinister secrets of the cursed castle, which lures its victim with a ghastly green glow each year on Halloween night. Guests brave enough to face the evil within will find out if they can escape the terror or be trapped under the castle forever. So, like I said, they're a luxury streetwear label founded by this guy Jackson Wang and co-founded by Henry Chung in Shanghai. And what's interesting is they actually put together like a haunted house light, or kind of like I don't like a themed pop-up experience thing in China last year. So not Universal was involved, but this guy and the label put together, they built out a whole Halloween thing in Shanghai last year. And so it's interesting. This is so interesting to me that HHN Singapore is building a haunted house around characters from a streetwear brand. And I think it's really smart. I mean, I think this is very similar to the Weekend thing. And these people, again, they have the background. If anything, like, I mean, these people have already put together an experience in Shanghai, right? That they've built themselves. And now you're going to make it into a haunted house. and involve the clothing brand. And it's just think of the merch sales, Scott. The merch sale.
Well, and for me, it's what we've been talking about for quite some time now, and that is that the intellectual properties that are being utilized not just for Halloween, but for pretty much anything, are getting further and further away from just being movie based. There was a time where, especially at a Halloween Horror Nights, that
Mhm,
everything was based on a horror film. Well, that industry does not have the popularity, does not have the reach that it once had, and
mhm,
clothing brands and like graphic street artists and there are, for example, as an art collector, one of the things that's happening right now, and it kind of started back in the Keith Haring days, but Banksy and that sort of thing. High end art collectors are seeking out works by street artists because they have that popularity. This is somebody who has developed a luxury line of clothing, but it's a very hip, very cool line of clothing. So it doesn't have to be a movie; it just has to be cool and hip. And I think that's the important thing to remember when it comes to intellectual property. I will throw this out there right now. If anybody could find a way to get T Turtle to come in and do a haunt with them, please call me because I would love to write that. But it is,
mm.
to me, you could do all kinds of fun things, because I know people are like, oh, you mean those cute little bunnies and kitties? But they're cute little bunnies and kitties that are like gnawing on bloody bones, and
Yep, yep,
I have one. I have a T-shirt that says "Hippity Hoppity, your soul is my property." And it's a rabbit dressed as the Grim Reaper. So
yep,
if you could make that wonderful connection, people know T Turtle. They know those, and if they don't know it by name, they know it by look, and it kind of transcends just the words. And I promise you, and the reason that I say this is I was at a trade show not too long ago that T Turtle had set up a booth, and they had exclusive T-shirts and plush, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you to purchase the stuff, you had to wait in line for like an hour.
mhm,
Um, so that is the kind of thing that you could actually, just like the Jackson Wang stuff that we're talking about here, you could very easily morph that into a full experience that would benefit both the product line and give you phenomenal merch sales, but also give you content that everybody knew and embraced. So I
yep.
I'm I am all for this. It makes total sense to me. I love it.
Yeah, I love it. It's interesting. I really would like to see more down this vein of, like Scott said, exactly like Scott said. I've seen that T-shirt too. I could imagine the T Turtle. I mean, you could just make characters out of the T Turtle people, and then they would be chasing you with the chainsaws. I mean, you really could just bring the T-shirts to life, and I think it would be fine. Because
A cute little bunny with a bloody shard of bone
yep,
that becomes, oh my god, it'd be terrifying. Um,
yeah, and yes, and I think that storytelling in haunts, I do think overall it has progressed over the years. But I think we're at the point now where you can quite easily make a story, just like they did in this one, right? They're just like, look, we're going to take this thing and we're just going to, you know, you. It's a very loose story, but it's a story. Under the castle, you're going to get trapped. I mean, that's easy. Chat GPT could write that, right? It's not rocket science to take. I guess what I'm saying is it doesn't have to have something that has an inherent story anymore. We can
well,
write the story around
and
it.
and the characters that, I mean, as you said, it's based on two characters that exist in the clothing line. So,
Yep.
you've already got their backstory. Just build upon it and find a way to make it really cool. I don't know all the details here, but I do think that it is important to keep that story going, and I think it's important to make certain that it represents the brand appropriately. You know,
Yep. Yeah, and I will say also it's interesting that Universal Singapore is doing this because Universal Singapore, right, is not managed by Universal. If I, our list,
correct.
most of our listeners should know that, but it's not. It's managed by that resort group. Um, I'm blanking on the name right now, but the Resort World Sentosa. Yeah,
Sentosa. Yeah, I was just gonna say, is
yeah,
it Sentosa? Yeah.
yeah. Who has locations elsewhere? I mean, they're not just located there. So they do have. So to me, I'm like, well, this is brilliant because they have connections to other shopping districts, other big retail brands, other big. They have big casino and retail operations that are really well positioned. I think to have relationships with luxury brands like this, and so you could see this becoming an immersive pop up experience in Vegas, or moving around to their other places. And it's just so interesting that it was. not Universal, right? That really is trying this experiment out. So it's smart. Whoever's doing this, smart. Good job.
Absolutely. And if nothing else, for the going back to the clothing line, if nothing else, get video content of the pop-up live experience and utilize it in your stores in every major market, in every major chain store that you happen to be in, on your website. It's a win-win. It's a just a bowl over win-win. And it's also a really interesting way to reevaluate Halloween. Obviously, with this show, we spent a lot of time reevaluating Halloween because that's all we've talked about. But as Philip said at the very beginning, we are in the midst of Halloween season, so who knows? Before Halloween hits, we'll probably be talking about Christmas, but we won't be doing it on this show because our time is up. So, on behalf of Philip Hernandez with Gantom Lighting and the Haunted Attraction Network, and myself, Scott Swenson with Scott Swenson Creative Development, this is Green Tagged Theme Park in 30. And if you haven't had enough, because let's face it, we got more stuff to talk about. If you hadn't had enough, please, we do have our additional content shows, our additional content streaming that we'll be working on today as well. So, and I know there's one thing that Philip and I haven't talked about that we will talk about in the after show. So, if you're just sticking around, we'll see you again next week, and make sure that you subscribe to our after show stuff because you hear us sometimes swear. I don't know, but anyway, see you next week.